Hello, we are live. Welcome to Developer Insights. I'm David.
And I'm Justin.
And together we are the leads on game development and design here at Codename.
We also founded Codename, so we've got that going for us too.
Yep, well, we're going to be your hosts for this episode and for every episode.
Because when we're not here, the show doesn't happen.
Still true.
Today is our 42nd episode.
Wait a minute. Today isn't Thursday.
I didn't say it was Thursday. I said it's our 42nd episode.
We aren't doing more than one a week to try and catch up to Mars's guiding hands, are we?
No, we're never catching up to Mars.
Okay, so what's the deal?
Well, there was a pretty big update earlier today. So,
Right.
Yeah.
So we're here to answer people's questions about that.
Yes. And because it's Wednesday, I haven't prepared any one-man reenactments. I usually do that Thursday morning.
Yeah. I mean, you practice them all Thursday morning, and then you never do them.
I know. It's really a waste of time. Think of all the stuff we could design in that morning. Anyway, we're here to answer your development and design questions about idle champions. And then we don't read this next bit because that's about one-man reenactments.
Right. So we have something just a little bit different today, of course, and that's related to the updates that went out about an hour and a half ago. And so let's just get into that. So we have a big list of updates, and if anyone's had a chance to take a look at the blog, it's all written out there, but we're going to go through the points sort of one at a time and talk about them, and then we're going to answer any questions you have on them. So starting with some of the easy ones, we have the soft cap increase. I don't actually think I have any questions on this. This is just great.
Yeah. We bumped up the soft cap, so now champions have upgrades up to E to the 90 or 92 or something like that. It's quite high.
Okay, so that one's an easy one. The next easy one here is the item level cap redistribution. So you want to tell us a little bit about what that is and how long it's been in the works?
Yeah, so the item level cap, some equipment items have a cap on how high they can be leveled up with duplicate items or with blacksmithing contracts. Mainly this is ultimate cooldown items, though there's some other items that also have a cap. And for quite a while now, what has happened is if you sort of got it up to the cap in normal guild and then you made it shiny or golden, you retained those levels, but they didn't actually do anything because it was capped out. So, for example, your cooldown, your ultimate cooldown could only go up to 75% reduction. And so what we've done is anytime you go over the cap or have an item over the cap, we'll refund those excess item levels. It doesn't change the effectiveness of the item. We just refund those item levels that aren't doing anything into blacksmithing contracts. And we've been working on this we've been talking about it and kind of working on it for a long time. It's always been getting bumped for higher priority features, mainly because there were some edge cases that we couldn't really figure out how to address. We still can't figure out, but we kind of bit the bullet and we decided that now was the time to stop kicking the can down the road and just and get a pretty simplistic version of this redistribution out the door.
Cool. So what happens when you get an item that pushes you over that cap, and when do you get those levels refunded to you?
Yeah, so the system triggers when you load the game or switch parties or start an adventure. Basically, anytime you kind of load into a formation. And at that point, the system will check all of your items, see if there's anything that's over the cap, and set them down and refund those items. We're hoping to make this more streamlined in the future. So, for example, if you use a potion of polish on an item and that takes it over the cap, you won't get your refund until you load into a new party or reload the game or start a new adventure. But those are kind of the edge cases I was talking about earlier. It's kind of like when you use a potion of polish, it just pops up the item and makes it shiny. There's not really a place there to say, and you also got a bunch of blacksmithing contracts, because sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. It could be confusing for players who don't understand what the cap is about if they kind of get them there with no explanation. So there's some of those edge cases we still can't address in the future. But for now, the system will work. It'll just trigger when you load the game, switch parties, or start a new adventure.
Cool. All right, so with those ones out of the way, let's talk about what probably most of the players are here to hear about, and that is the updates that have happened to first Briv and then Human. So starting with Briv, can you tell us what the problem with Briv was?
Yeah, so Briv had a couple of problems, and we've talked about them previously on the show. We announced that there were Briv and Human changes coming a couple of months ago, a few months ago actually at this point. And Briv had two major problems. One was that when players got Briv to very, very high item levels, and he was skipping a lot of levels, there were some minor server issues that were happening when he was skipping very, very quickly, especially in conjunction with Human or speed potions. We were able to address most of those issues with some changes to our infrastructure and sort of how we handled Briv skips on our side. But the big issue that remained was that he was able to skip past bosses that were meant to be blockers. So especially ones that sort of the ultimate boss from the end of a campaign, or challenging bosses tied to evergreen unlocks. Sort of Dragon Bait's unlock comes to mind, where you have to fight this dragon that powers up every time you fight them. And being able to skip over those encounters is really just counter to the game. I think last episode I used the example of like, what if you were able to beat Dark Souls but just skip all the bosses? Like, it's not interesting or fun. So that was kind of the issue that we had with Briv.
Fair enough. I still don't think you can compare us to Dark Souls, but
I'm gonna keep on doing it.
So what changes have now been made to Briv that handle this?
So Briv, the only change that's been done to Briv is effective in non-free play adventures, and that is that he will no longer skip boss areas that you haven't completed. So if he was going to skip a boss, instead he will skip to that boss, he defeat the boss, and then he will continue jumping to whatever area he was going to skip to. If there's multiple bosses, say you have a 10 skip Briv, and he was going to skip 2 bosses, you have to stop at each boss. If you only had a 3 skip boss or Briv, then maybe stop at 1 boss and then skip another 2 areas after you defeat it. So yeah, that's where his behavior was changed, is in non-free play adventures. In free play adventures, you can still skip as many areas as you want. It's not a concern to us. You've already beaten the adventure, so you can skip past that boss. And like I said, we already addressed the server issues that Briv was causing on our end. And one clarification that some people have asked about is in Trials adventures don't count as a free play, so you will have to defeat all the bosses in Trials adventures.
Fair enough. All right. Now, it says Briv also comes with a new feat, and this is the feat that came up actually from a chat suggestion, I think early in the year on the show, and then we promised that we would do that, and it didn't get done, and it didn't get done, and now it's done and it's out. So tell us about the new feat.
Yeah, so there's a new feat for Briv that is available for 12,500 gems, and what it does is it caps his skip at 4 areas. So if he was going to skip 5 areas, instead he will just skip 4. And this is something that people were asking for, because they basically, that the ability to skip bosses is something that's quite powerful that Briv can do. And so now in free plays, you could set up your Briv with 4 skips, such that you skip from level or area 1 to 6 to 11 to 16, etc., and you never actually fight a boss. And so that makes him a little bit more reliable in free plays, and that you never have to fight a boss. And so that is why we put that in. Now, actually, I guess the reason we put that in is because players would get their item levels on Briv's skip item to the point where he does exactly 4 skips 100% of the time, and then you wouldn't be able to open any more like Electrum chests or Patron chests, because if you got another item that put him over that, he'd have a chance to do 5 skips, and that would just sort of break that really easy ride through the free play. So this will cap at 4 areas. It doesn't have any effect if you can't skip 4 areas at least 100% of the time. So if your item level on Briv isn't like 5 or 8,000 or whatever is required for 4 skips, then this new feat doesn't do anything, and so I would not spend your gems on it.
Cool. All right. Anyone heard that chime sound. That was Windows asking me if now was a good time to do an update, which it is not.
No?
No, I don't think that's not ideal. Okay, moving on from Briv, we've also made some changes to Human. So let's, similarly to Briv, can you start by telling us sort of what the concerns were with Human?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Human has a cool kit, and one of his abilities is a speed ability that allows him to cause enemies to count for more quest progress or drop more quest items. The problem that we had with Human was I did a very bad job of balancing him. Quite ironically, his ability called Carefully Balanced was not carefully balanced, and it caused him to be majorly out of step with all other speed champions. So for example, Melf or Sentry, you could get Human to a point where they were much better than both of those champions with far less effort or equipment or anything. So he was just incredibly overtuned in terms of how powerful his speed ability could get right out of the gate.
Right, okay. So handling this, what changes have been made to Human?
Yeah, so it's some pretty simple changes. We just kind of reduced a couple of the numbers. We reduced the base percentage chance to get more items from 25% to 20%, so a pretty small change there. And then we changed the value of Carefully Balanced from 10% down to 5%, so you get less sort of boost to that for each adjacent champion. And we also put a cap on his slot 4 or their slot 4 item, which is the one that buffs Carefully Balanced. So there's a kind of hard cap to where that ability can get to. And I put together a little chart table, if you will.
Just bring that up.
With kind of the before and after in a couple of cases. So you can screen cap this. But I did the math for you guys. So this is all with the teamwork ×2 specialization, which is the one you use if you want to go fast with Human. So before, if you just had 2 adjacents and no items, you had a 60% chance to get additional quest drops. And sort of with no items, you could get that up to even 100% if you had the rare and epic feats and adjacents. And if you go all the way down to the bottom one there with a level 2500 epic item for adjacent champions and the rare and epic feats, you could get it up to something like 17 drops per kill, which meant you were getting through areas in 1 or 2 kills, which was not something we want you to be able to do with just one champion super easily. So the reductions, after the reductions, the percentages are quite a bit, well, not quite a bit, they're lower. They're actually less low than I was kind of expecting them to be, given the numbers that were changed. But so I mean, you'll need about 2 or 3 times as many drops to get through areas, but it's not a lot. And so you can get back up to, if you still have that 2500 epic with your 4 adjacents, your rare and epic feats, you're still looking at about 4 kills to get through an area instead of 2. So those are the changes that were made to the hues.
Cool. All right, we're going to move back to the main screen. So last chance to screen grab this. Of course, there's always going to be a VOD. Okay. Moving on then. So the next piece in this update, of course, is the Dismantle System. And so we gave everyone a sneak peek of the Dismantle System a few weeks back, but there's been a few minor changes to it, some of it based on the feedback that we got from the community based on that sneak peek. So tell us about the final version. How does it work, and who are we going to be able to use it on?
Yeah, so Dismantle is a new system that we first talked about several weeks ago. Where the intention is that it will be enabled for champions that we deem to have had significant and potentially negative balance changes recently. So it's the first round here is usable with Briv, Human, and Ashara. And basically the idea is that it will remove a bunch of sort of the time and energy that you've put into the champion, and allow you to put that on other champions if you feel like these champions are no longer, if they no longer have a place in your formation. I feel like with the nerfs here, that they still are very, very, very powerful champions, still quite a bit more powerful than any other speed champions in the game. But if you want to dismantle them, you can. And Dismantle will do, I think, 4 things. It'll remove up to 10,000 item levels per item and refund those in as Blacksmith contracts, including potentially a new legendary contract, a huge Blacksmith contract. It'll remove golden and shiny guilds from items and just make them normal items, and it'll refund you potions of polish as well as golden potions. It'll remove legendary items from the champion and refund you with a new legendary potion type that'll allow you to give other items legendaries. And it'll remove any feats that cost gems and refund you gems for that. So basically the idea here is you can take kind of the power that you have on one champion if you feel like they don't have a place in your formation anymore, and put it onto another champion and have that power there instead. Now this system runs concurrently with the legendary Dismantle system, or the legendary Dismantle system, wrong inflection. And that's where you're able to dismantle legendary items only, and that applies to all other champions. So this was done in response to some player feedback that we got, that a lot of the synergistic power that they have on a certain champion is based off of legendaries that they have on other champions. So if you've got Ashara, then maybe you've put a bunch of legendaries onto other champions that buff Ashara. And so this is something that we wanted to provide so that you could reconfigure your legendary items alongside potentially moving the power from these sort of main champions in this. So one of the perks of this system is it does allow us to make these larger balance changes if necessary, while still respecting the time and energy that you guys have put into gearing up your champions. And of course, we have made adjustments from the point at which we announced it based on feedback from you guys, and we will continue to make adjustments based on your feedback now that the system is live. So that is the system.
Okay. So following on that, you mentioned a handful of new items, as well as the potion of polish has also been updated. So let's go over the items you can get from a Dismantle, and especially the new ones, and how they work. Sure. Starting with the potion of polish. So what did we change in potion of polish?
Yeah, so the potion of polish, previously you used it and it just applied the shiny, or it granted a shiny card to a random champion and a random piece of equipment. We decided to make that targetable now, so you can select both the champion and the equipment that the potion of polish will hit and make shiny. And this is just kind of a general quality of life improvement. Nothing felt worse than using your potion of polish and having it hit an ultimate item or a champion you don't use or something like that. So now you can make sure that hits the champion and equipment you want it to hit.
And that is retroactively updating any of your existing potions, correct?
Yes. Yeah. Any potions of polish that you had in your inventory from before this update will be the new type. And that should be I think some platforms had the potion and the new potion of polish behavior live a little bit early, but that should be live almost everywhere at this point. Okay.
The next new potion that you mentioned is the epic golden potion.
Yeah, so this is similar to the potion of polish, except instead of making an item shiny, it will make it golden. The one caveat being that it can only be used on equipment that has been previously sold or given away or available somehow in-game as golden. So if there's an item that we haven't yet done a golden item for, you won't be able to use the golden potion on that until we do.
And when you go to use that, it'll indicate which items are available for that.
Yes, you use that item, you select a champion, and then it'll show you the items that are available. It doesn't consume the potion until you actually pick the item, so you can experiment a little bit. As long as you don't click on an item, a specific item, you can cancel out and try a different champion.
Okay. Next new potion is, or I guess new item, is the legendary potion.
Yeah, so the legendary potions, these are the ones you get when you dismantle a legendary item, either through the sort of general dismantle or the full dismantle system or the legendary dismantle system. And when you dismantle a legendary item, you get a legendary potion of that level. So if you have a level 4 legendary and dismantle it, you would get a level 4 legendary potion. Legendary potions can be used on epic or legendary items, and they make that item a legendary of the level of the potion. So for example, if you've got an epic item and a level 4 legendary potion, and you use it on that epic item, you will then have a level 4 legendary. If you use it on a legendary item, it will increase the legendary item to that level. It won't add those levels; it'll just increase it to that level, and you'll get credited a potion of the previous item or the previous level that the legendary was. So, for example, if you have a level 2 legendary item and you use a level 4 potion on it, you'll end up with a level 4 legendary item and a level 2 potion in your inventory to use elsewhere. So you will never lose items or levels, legendary levels, if you use it on a legendary, but it doesn't add the levels.
Now, can I take a legendary level 2 potion and use it on a 4 and get a 4 potion back?
No, you can only use legendary potions on legendaries that are below the level of the potion.
Okay.
So yeah.
Cool. Next item is the legendary Blacksmith contract. Also the huge I think also known as the huge Blacksmith contract.
Yes, I think it's called the huge. We kind of refer to them based on the rarity around here. So yeah, this is a new blacksmithing contract. It'll award 120 item levels to a piece of equipment. The epic one, for reference, was 24 levels to the piece of equipment. And this is just really to cut down on the number of upgrades that had to happen, so that we're not just sitting here staring at fireworks going off while you're moving your item levels around.
Fair enough. All right, so I think that covers pretty much everything that was in the update, but it does leave what I imagine is a question on the top of many people's heads, and that is, given all this, what are we going to do in the future to limit or prevent needing to do changes like this again?
Yeah, so I mean, certain things like the human change, like that's something that we really should have caught a lot earlier on, that it was going to be a problem. So that's really an issue for us as a design team to try and do better at balancing our champions. Now, one thing that I've mentioned on stream a couple of times several times in the last several months is that we do have a larger design team now. We're up from 1 to 2. And so that gives us more cycles to iterate on new champions and see about making them more balanced right out of the gate, as opposed to having to come back later and make changes. And you know, we're trying to do better at the design and balance to make sure we don't have to make these changes. You know, a lot of players, I've seen a lot of feedback where players are like, well, why don't you just buff everyone up to the same level as these champions instead of reducing them down? And it's certainly sort of my preference is to always buff champions and to not nerf champions, but sometimes there's ones that are just so egregiously out of step with the other power levels that there's just no real way to do it. And so that's, you know, when this kind of thing has to happen, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think sort of one of the other things that we're prioritizing is making sure that we're watching sort of the what people are discussing in our channels like the Discord, and just making sure that if something shows up, it's like, hey, this looks like it's going to be something that is what's the word I'm looking for? Something you can take advantage of, something that's going to be more powerful than it's intended. To keep a close eye on that and make sure that if there is any changes, that we make them as quickly as possible rather than letting them linger. Part of the big problem with the human and Briv is that those abilities had been there and being used in this way for a significant period of time before sort of it came to our attention in a way that we thought, oh shoot, this is something that we need to address. And so I think at that point a large amount of the community had sort of gotten wind of how to use it in that way, and it became a big part of their gameplay, which is something that obviously made the whole situation a lot worse. Okay.
Yeah.
So, any more comments on that before we get into the questions?
I think there's quite a few questions. Yeah, we're already up to pretty much as many questions as we normally get in an entire show, and we're only, well, I guess we're 25%
Halfway
of the way
in.
in.
Okay.
So yeah, I think we're gonna, at this point, we're not gonna pull any questions forward from last week's episode because we've got a lot of questions to go through right now. So I will just start highlighting some, and you can go ahead and ask me
Sure.
any of these.
First question that made it into the list was a question from Garwar, and the question is, if a golden epic is dismantled and not reapplied, will it go back into the wild offer system?
So yeah, I looked into this earlier. I'm pretty sure it will. So yeah, you could be offered that golden epic again once you've dismantled it.
Okay. Next question here from Foolish Genius 89. Do you have a timeline on the Dismantle System and targetable potions of polish for consoles?
We're hoping as soon as possible. This is something that Peter's been working on. Unfortunately, the timing here was kind of unfortunate because we're trying to get localization as well as the new shop available on console, and both those things are causing some delays in the approval process because they're bigger updates than we normally do. So we have things in submission for all the consoles. It's just a matter of when they get approved on their end. So hopefully soon.
For sure. All right. There's a similar question here that was followed up after Gar's question from Nox Angus, asking if a golden epic is dismantled and it came from a patron, will the item be available again in the patron shop?
That one I am not sure about. I would have to look into that. I don't know. I can't give you an answer one way or the other because the patron shop, the way that it tracks whether an item's been purchased is different from how the wild offer system tracks whether an item has been purchased.
Right. So it does raise the question,
yeah.
This seems like it might be something that we should be looking at and then unifying.
Yeah, I think it probably, I'm not sure actually. I mean, that might be a kind of a balance issue of, because we don't want to create a situation where someone's like, well, I'm going to dismantle this champion just so I can get a golden epic potion and then put all of the stuff except for that golden epic potion back onto it and then just go back into the patron shop and buy it for patron currency. And you're basically just netting a golden epic potion for the price of the patron currency. So
yeah. Okay. Additional thought needs to be put onto that for sure. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Next question here from Slap Happy Slappy. Okay, sure. Can we get a change to the new Briv feat or another feat along the same lines? Lock his percent to even jumps so that the time between, say, 2 jumps and 3 jumps isn't incredibly long and uneven?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we initially considered with the feats to have one kind of for each jump level. But we ended up just going with the 4 just to kind of reduce the amount of new feats we were putting in there. I think that having kind of separate ones is a little, well, I don't know. We talked about doing something different and ended up on the 4. It's, this is something that we could put in something else in the future, but I think for now the 4 is pretty good. Yeah, we did consider doing one that just rounded down, so you didn't have a chance to be inconsistent. But kind of thinking about the use case for that, I don't know that it would be as useful as having kind of fixed ones. Because you have the same kind of issue if you're trying to do 4 skips and you've just got a feat that rounds down. You got the same issue where you get to a point where you don't want to get any more equipment for Briv because he could potentially get to 5 skips with a chance for a 6th, and then that one feat would just round down to 5, which wouldn't be as useful. So we ended up on the 4-skip one. It's certainly something where we could add in some additional ones if someone could provide a really good use case for them.
Okay. Next question from Horizon Edge. Will you mitigate increase in bad outcomes from RNG from large contracts, either by dismantling into smaller contracts or allowing rescaling? You want to first sort of say what the problem would be before sort of if there's something we could do to mitigate it?
This is kind of, so we created the legendary contracts because there were some players who were going to get a lot of contracts out of Dismantle, and so we didn't want them to basically have hundreds of contracts to use after the system went live if they chose to dismantle. But sort of the downside of that is that when you use a contract, all of the levels go on to one piece of equipment. And so you could potentially have a situation where if you have like 5 legendary contracts that, you could have an item or multiple items even that don't get any levels. So I think this is probably something that we are going to need to look at reevaluating. Because I think it is something that can be really unfortunate, especially at your small contract numbers. It's sort of, it evens out over dozens and dozens of contracts, but over just a couple of small ones, it can definitely feel very, very random. And yeah, the second question is very similar to that one. So.
All right. Do you want me to ask the next? All right, move. Okay. It's crossed out. I guess not. Next question then is from Ismaster. And the question is, don't you think the Hue nerf was too much for new players?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a big change. I appreciate that it is a big change. My preference on the human stuff would be that he was never as powerful as he was, because like I kind of said, he was an order of magnitude better than other speed champions, and that's really the problem that we had. Is he's just one human was equal to 3 or 4 other speed champions, and so the balance was just way off. And I think the solution would have been to not have him have been so powerful out of the gate, because then nobody would have missed the extra power, because he would have been just as powerful as the other speed champions were. In fact, he's still more powerful, I think, than several of the other speed champions. Certainly some of the earlier speed champions were really tiptoeing around speed abilities. So yeah, I think that the scaling on human now is better. And I think that he's still an extremely powerful and useful crusader or champion. Now I'm doing it.
Oops.
He's still an extremely powerful champion, even for new players. You won't find another champion who can give you that much speed that quickly. So.
Okay. Now the next question is completely unrelated, but it is a good question nonetheless. And this question is from Super Collins, asking about events, actually. And the question is, are there any plans to create a new event in addition to the 13 or so already in the game?
So there are actually 17 events in game. And the easy answer is no, we don't have any plans to create new events, at least insofar as the sort of events that run every 3 weeks or so, where you unlock new champions. Those are pretty much fixed at this point, and we are unlikely to deviate from those 17. With that said, there are certainly opportunities for other types of events, other types of content that happen from time to time. So, we do quarterly celebrations 4 times a year, because that's what quarterly means, where we sort of give out a bunch of free stuff if you play every day during those celebrations. And then there's some other plans for other cool things. There's ICP events that happen from time to time. There's Idle Champion Presents, when we run a tabletop game that runs alongside stuff in the game. So yeah, there's some other stuff that is planned there.
All right, you want to go ahead and ask number 11, Justin?
Yeah, so this is a question from Lucy Ira, who asks, for months you've been saying things here often, repeatedly, week on week, but when the time comes to address whatever it is, you do something completely different. The fourth Modron core won't come with a new party, or you'd rather buff DPS up to Kron's level instead of nerfing, are just two examples. How are we meant to trust what you say on these streams if your consistent month-long answers can change on a whim with little to no warning?
Yeah, so I thought this was an interesting question, and after sort of a bit of a sort of a general addressment to this, so you can touch on the two specific examples. But one of the things that I think is worth keeping in mind, especially for things that if we're talking about things that aren't out yet, and I think we try to sort of prefix when we're talking about these things as this is our current thinking on it. This is the direction that we're going, because oftentimes when we get into the sort of the thick of getting something sorted out, either other options come up, or it seems like what we were thinking has issues with it that ended up not being the best way to approach it. So like I said, we try to prefix or preface what we're saying with, this is what we're thinking, not this is what we're going to do, in particularly for things that are upcoming, and especially things that are further out, because oftentimes, when we get to, like I said, when we actually get into the thick of it, we start to discover that, there are actually things we hadn't quite considered, and then that means that things get changed a little bit. And we certainly wouldn't want to lock ourselves into like, hey, we said we were going to do it this way, and then when we come to approach it, it's like, oh, actually, it would be better if we did it this way, and then just be sort of handcuffed to it. So we do try to prefix that with this is what we're currently thinking. Mm-hmm. And if we don't do that, I mean, certainly call us on it. But when it comes to stuff that's upcoming, definitely things can change, and so you have to kind of take that under consideration when we say what we're planning to do. It's one of the reasons why we very rarely give dates for things, because they almost invariably change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that that we kind of, we really let you guys into a lot of our thoughts quite a bit sooner than probably most game studios or designers would, because we want to create a lot of the stuff in the game sort of collaboratively with you guys. That's why we kind of talked about the Dismantle system on stream several times prior to it coming out, so that we could get your guys' feedback and make changes if necessary. So like the initial blog that we put out about the Dismantle system is actually different from the one that was released, because we got feedback and we thought about it some more, and we made some more changes. So I think that it's kind of a double-edged sword, the way that we are really open about what we're thinking on these streams, because stuff can change over the course of doing the design and thinking about it, and even doing the implementation. There's an old joke in computer science and game design, and that 10% of your time is or 90% of your time is, what is the one? Dave, you know this one.
100%. Where are you going?
90.
You complete 90%.
90% of your time.
10% of the time. You get 90% of the way there.
The last 10% takes 90% of the time.
Something like that.
Where, it's something like that. Where basically, there's 80-20 rule. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Pareto distribution.
You'll spend half your time in the first 80% of implementation, then half your time in the last 20% of implementation. And so I think that we often we'll talk about stuff on here when we're still in that first sort of 80%, and then a lot of stuff can change in that last 20% of implementation time. Though these specific examples here, the fourth Modron core not coming with a new party, that's actually, I don't believe I ever said that. I think what I said was there will be more Modron cores coming that won't be associated with new parties. So that's separate from that. And buffing up DPS to Kron's level instead of nerfing it. I would love to be able to buff all DPS up to the level of the topmost champions, but like I said, there's some cases where that's just not possible.
Well, someone's going to scrub back through the VODs and find you actually said that, Justin. I don't know.
Probably. Yeah, and then it may very well be that I did say that, and then things changed.
Yeah.
To be fair, To be fair, there was a period of time where I was thinking of not releasing a new core with a new party and having it be something you have to earn in some other way. But I don't think I ever said that on stream, but maybe I did.
I mean, I know there was some hesitancy around releasing a new party, sort of given that we're still working on improvements to the offline progress. And so I think the question was, would we release a new Modron core at the same time as a new party? And the answer was, we weren't going to bind ourselves to that we would actually could release a Modron core independently of a party. It just so happened they did end up getting released together. So I think that's what happened. I think that's why that but at any rate.
I would love to see the log if I did say that. So Wandering Bereft, please get your logs. I would like to see that.
Okay.
I'm not saying I didn't say it, but it certainly was never my intent.
So the next question here is about, let's see, it's from Horizon Edge, and the question is, why is Hue a problem now? They have functioned the same since release.
Yeah, so Hue was a problem at release. The issue was that we just weren't really doing a good job of paying attention to what the numbers came out at. So they were a problem. As soon as they were released, their numbers were out of whack and should have been much lower. And it's not that they're a problem now, and they weren't a problem then. It's just they were a problem then, and we didn't realize it, and so we are fixing it. It sucks. I don't like to do nerfs. I've said this many times. I don't like nerfing champions. I would rather buff champions, but in some cases we just mess up out of the gate, and it has to be done just to maintain the general balance of the game. Now, I know some people will roll their eyes when I say the general balance of the game, because it's an incremental, an incremental game, and in general, the balance, the balance on exponentially growing numbers is very out of whack. But there's some cases where it's just too out of whack for the health of the game.
Okay, the next question actually is not really a question I'm going to read here, just highlighting that another player asking about a way to split up the huge Blacksmith's contracts down into the smaller ones, or fix something with the RNG on that. So just making that as a note, certainly a concern shared by many people. Next question is from
actually before we get to it, I just want to, there's some follow up on the the question about the health of the game when I mentioned that. And what I mean by that is there are certainly some bench slots where it's very difficult for us to release a new champion, because there is someone in that slot who is so good at something, or at everything in some cases, where any champion we put into that slot is just instantly F tier, because they just can't compete with those big, huge champions. And so that's what I mean when I say there's the health of the game, is when we have a champion like Human, or you have champions like Briv or Averin, like, it's hard to put other champions in those slots that do similar things, because there's always going to be a champion there that does them so much better. And in general, I'm okay with there being a champion there that does something better in a certain niche. But the challenge is that there are some champions that are just orders of magnitude better than other champions. We can't, someone's saying, we'll step them all up. And that is extremely hard to do. A lot of the champions who are those really powerful champions do a lot of double or triple or quadruple dipping on their own abilities, and it's very, because of exponential math and how that works, it's very hard to catch other champions up unless they themselves also double, triple, quadruple dip on things. And we'd have to get someone to compete with Averin's buffing, for example. It's not about just adding a couple of times twos to them. We've been doing some sort of minor balance tweaks over the past 6 weeks, And adding times 2s, times 4s, even times 8s, they're not going to move the needle in a major way. They're just sort of going to do small changes towards it. In order to actually get someone to catch up with some of those really out of whack champions, we'd have to add a times 10 million or times 100 trillion buff to their abilities, and that just doesn't make sense to do, because it just gets ridiculous. So it's very, very hard to catch champions up to those ones who are really, really out of whack. With that said, we're not going around just nerfing every single champion that double dips. We're trying to do our best to help other champions catch up as much as they can. But it's a hard thing.
Okay, just highlighting all the questions.
Mm-hmm.
Where were we? 19?
There's 16 here as well.
16. All right. Yeah. Question 16 here is from Porkbelly517, asking, will the item cap mean that we will be able to get lower tier items to complete the collections?
So the changes that we did today don't make any change to that. It's still what you're asking for, being able to complete the collection by getting like the lower quality rarity items, is still something that we want to do. I think we highlighted that last week or the week before. Some sort of mechanism to be able to do that. But the changes that we did today aren't going to affect that, unfortunately.
Okay, next question here is from Maniac Clown, asking, if Briv skips into a boss, he now skips the remaining levels he otherwise would have skipped afterward. Does this use additional sprint stacks, i.e. does it count as 2 individual skips, or does he merely resume the existing skip such that it doesn't consume additional stacks?
Yeah, so that's an easy question. The answer is it resumes the existing skip. So you don't use more stacks when you skip through bosses or 2 bosses. When you stop at a boss as part of a skip, you just use the normal stacks. So it functions, the cost for stacks functions the same in free play and out of free play, in that you'll spend the set number of stacks to skip, say from area 4 to 8. In free play and out of free play, it uses the same number of stacks. It's just in a non-free play, you have to stop at the boss, and then you'll continue skipping to area 8 in that example.
Okay. Next question. This one is from Truwan Heda. Okay. Can the feats that can be bought with gems be put into the gem shop?
Yeah, good question.
Seems like a reasonable request.
We thought about this. It seems like a reasonable request, and then you think about how many feats that is. And I think for a brand new player, that would be several hundred feats, which I think would dilute all the other stuff that is in the gem shop. So I think if we were going to do something like that, we would need to have some sort of separate tab, or a way to filter that much more easily. So yeah, I mean, I think we did talk about that when we were redesigning the shop, and I think we decided it would be too many feats right off the bat until we could think of a more elegant solution.
Right. I mean, I assume there wouldn't be, if it was filtered by champions that you owned, could help. But yeah. Okay. Next question then is from Alex Byrne. Why are event favor conversion breakpoints based instead of using a pure logarithmic conversion calculation?
That's a fair question. I don't recall why we chose it one way or the other. Yeah, I don't know.
It's just what you were thinking on that day.
I guess so. I mean, you'd have to go back and ask 6, 8, I don't know, when was, yeah, it would have been 5 or 6 years ago that we probably would have done the code for that.
So current Justin doesn't know what 5 or 6 years ago Justin was thinking.
Who knows? A lot of stuff has happened since then.
Probably doesn't even know what yesterday Justin was thinking. All right.
I'd like to find out what 18 months ago Justin was thinking about Human, but
Wasn't apparently.
that ship has sailed.
Okay.
Let's see. Here's a question in blue. That means I get to ask it. This is a question from Ye Old Dice Goblin, who says, is there a reason why PlayStation is missing updates? On PC, there's an update saying you fixed a bug. On console, said update is not on PS4. Also, PS4 still has the old versions of the Potion of Polish. Any word on when we will get any quality of life features?
Yeah, so I think you might have addressed this a little bit earlier in the show, but we're still waiting to get the updates pushed through on PlayStation. It's just one of those things that there's an approval process and it's submitted, but we haven't gotten the approval yet through. So we're still waiting on PlayStation for that. But as soon as possible is sort of as soon as that goes through. But shouldn't be more than, I don't know if we have an ETA on it. I'm trying to think.
It's very hard to give a date thing because it's going through because we're putting the localization and some of the shop changes in there. It's going through a deeper level of review than the normal updates.
A lot more scrutiny is being applied to it than typically goes through with our regular just content patches. So,
Cassius 33 or 335 asks, what kind of game is Dev Souls?
When I saw this asked in the chat, I swear someone followed up and said it isn't a game because devs don't have souls, which,
Ouch.
Oh, no.
Ouch. Oh, that cuts deep.
But I only say that because I actually didn't have an idea for what Dev Souls is as a game, but
Dev Souls is.
Maybe that's what we're doing right now.
Well, we've got a company game jam coming up. Maybe that should be the new theme.
Okay.
All right, next question. I'm just going to keep on asking you.
Keep going. I'll make up some answers.
From Reaver01. The question is, was it meant to have the Dismantle button show up on all character sheets?
So currently we're running the Dismantle for the 3 champions in question, as well as a legendary Dismantle just across the board. So for the 3 champions that have had updates to them, that is Briv, Human, and Shara, right?
Correct.
I'm forgetting this. Wow. Jeez. Brain fart. Those have full dismantles on them, and then everyone else is getting just a legendary dismantle, which means that just the legendary items will come off of those champions if you choose, of all the other champions, if you choose to do a dismantle. And when you open that up, it should be fairly, and I mean extremely clear that that's what option is available to you if you open that up. So that is why it is on all of them, and it is intended to be there for sure. Okay, next question is from Possible Cabbage. Okay.
Possibly.
I got refunded contracts because of 17 items that were capped. Is there a way to find out which of my items are capped?
So yes, you could potentially open a ticket. Hi, Sean. You could potentially open a ticket, and we do have that information available. Most likely, those items were ultimate cooldown items because there are not that many. There are not that many items outside of ultimate cooldown that actually have a cap. I think you can probably count them on one hand. So it was most of your ultimate cooldown items. Anything you had the ultimate cooldown that was maybe shiny, especially on the your sort of base evergreen champions. Those would be the ones that I would assume would likely be triggered by that.
Okay. Next question here is from a name that I can always pronounce, which is Fewer Pills, asking, because you still didn't fix the Jim plus Briv synergy, Jim gets a capital, Briv does not, I'm not sure what you're trying to say there, to push absurdly high favors. Is it intended? Because if that will never get fixed, I'm no longer holding myself from not doing it.
Yeah, so we didn't make any changes to Jim in this particular pass. We did mention that Jim could be a target for some slight adjustments back when we initially kind of talked about the Jim, Briv, and Human changes. Is it intended? It's hard to. there are definitely some ways in the game right now where you can get further than we would probably intend, quote unquote intend. Whether or not those are things that we are in a big rush to fix, I don't know. I think that, if players want to find some sort of clever ways to do things that are not intended, that's not always a bad thing. But I will say that pushing to absurdly high favors, I think it does kind of trivialize the game for you, especially in that campaign moving forward. I don't know that it's the most fun thing for every player to do, but certainly I think there are ways to do it. So yeah, I don't know that we'll ever track down all of the kind of edge cases and clever combinations.
Okay. Here we have another question. It's kind of an interesting take. This question is from Cassius335 asking, I might be repeating myself, but can we get a feat which sets Briv Skip to 0? Possibly boosting one or more of his other powers instead.
That's an interesting question. I've not thought of doing anything like that. I think that feats that disable a certain power to empower other things are maybe a bit of a non-starter, a bit of a slippery slope. If we were like, hey, can I make my Celestes so they don't heal and instead just buff more? It's like, well, we probably could do something like that. Would we want to sort of do something like that? Probably not. But yeah, it's an interesting question.
All right, here's a tough one, Justin.
Mm-hmm.
This question is from SailNet, and the question is, can you commit to addressing problematic champs sooner in the future?
So I guess there's a couple of things on this. One I would say is for things that are sort of weird edge cases. A good example would be Krydle. Recently, we found a bug in Krydle's smoke bomb attack and fixed that. And that was, causing Krydle to essentially do weird amounts of DPS that were problematic, I guess you could say. And so we fixed that bug, but we didn't not fix that for a long time because we were okay with it. We did not fix that for a long time because we didn't know it was happening. And nobody had really told us that it was happening. Or at least it just didn't get through to us, to the dev team. And so I think there might be some problematic champion combinations and behavior that we just don't know about, that obviously I can't commit to addressing if I don't know about it. So I would encourage players, if they find some really weird behavior, to let us know so that we can address them. I think for other champions, there are definitely some known problematic champions right now. We've talked about some of them already in this stream, and I would say that the timeline for addressing some of those, I would like to address some of them as soon as possible, but there's also some that are kind of on the edge of problematic, and I don't know how we will address them. So, we want to have the game be as balanced as possible, but we also don't want to break the game for people who are having a lot of fun. And I know that's a ridiculous thing to say after we just broke the game for a lot of people who are having a lot of fun, but but we don't want to do this. And so, we're going to continue to try and make the game as fun and as healthy as we can moving forward. We want the game to be able to last for a lot longer than it already has lasted for.
Yeah, so Justin, we're just about out of time. In fact, we're basically out of time. So I think I just want to add a comment to this, and then we'll wrap it right up.
Sure.
And that is that certainly we'll be the first to admit, or not first to admit, but first to say that this is not a situation that we wanted to find ourselves in. And it's something that we definitely are going to be working to avoid at all costs going forward. It's something that we're prioritizing, and we're paying close attention to it because it has not been it's not been pleasant for for the community. It's not been pleasant for our moderators and for our community management, our managers, and it's definitely not been pleasant for us, and it's absolutely definitely not been pleasant for the players. So anything we can do to make sure that something like this doesn't go on for this long, doesn't get this sort of large of a problem, is something that we're going to be looking at, because I don't think anyone involved is especially happy about it. So yeah, we're out of time. Let's just run through what we got here.
Yeah, if we didn't get to your question today, don't worry, you'll have another opportunity. We'll be live again tomorrow at our normal time, which is actually this time at 2 o'clock Pacific tomorrow. So come on back and ask some more questions. If we didn't get to your question, we could get to it tomorrow. Though, of course, before we sign off, we'd like to thank our tireless mods. This week, I think we had some extras. We had Mars, Martin, Trevor, and I think Jordan might have been around as well. So thanks to all of you for helping to grab those questions and keep things awesome.
Yeah, and of course, thanks to all of you for hanging out, watching the stream, asking great questions, and enjoying the game. Because without you, no one here would get to do what we do.
We'd have to do something else.
All right.
Thanks all. So now that everything has been dismantled, where will people hang their Christmas stockings?
It's not that type of mantle, Justin.
Oh wait, so how's the Earth going to survive without that hot, rocky layer between the crust and the core?
Nope, it's not that type of mantle either.
Which is so confusing.
C'est la vie.